Welcome one and all. Today is Sunday the excuse me, I've got some noise and interruptions. Sunday the 26th of February, 7 p.m. Beautiful warm day here in Melbourne, and it's quite balmy. Clouds overhead, and just nice to be alive sort of a day. We've got some great alignments happening right now in the sky, a few retrogrades and stuff like that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to get into some of the stars that are around in the sky right now. Some beautiful stars, and of course, I did do a show probably 5 or 6 weeks back where I did explain all the beautiful stars of the winter skies, the winter triangle, the winter hexagon, all of these precious jewels in the sky. I'm going to go over that a little bit, and I'm also going to go into a little bit of the metaphysics of all of this science. Why did the ancients so love the stars? They loved the stars, you see, because they looked up and they realized that these little shining lights in the sky, with all their photons shooting through the universe and traveling for millions of years, they realized that these little lights were very, very precious, and they were like spiritual fathers. And in fact, they used to call them the father fountains of life. Wow, they knew a lot about the stars. I wonder if we lost a little bit of this science, and something bedarkened and beclouded our skies in the spiritual sense. Perhaps religion. Well, rest assured that the science is coming back, and along with that is the consciousness that can understand it. Because unconsciousness cannot understand this science. In fact, the unconscious ones call this science of astrology a pseudoscience, because they can't see the causes of any of the effects. They're interested in studying effects, you see, and for looking at effects and focusing on effects, they miss the whole lot. They lose all of their perspective. So in the winter, we are blessed, so to speak, with the winter stars, and they are the stars from Aries through to Virgo. They are the first 6 signs of the zodiac. And when you look up tonight at about 10 in the evening, maybe 11, you will see directly above you the alignment of Aries on the western horizon, setting, and Virgo on the eastern horizon, rising. And in between are the constellations of, so in this order, Aries being the first, corresponding to the top of the head of the human being, Adam Kadmon, as above so below, and Pisces being the 2 feet, the last sign. But we're just going to go to Virgo. Virgo finishes in the belly. You have Aries in the head, Taurus in the head, Gemini, the twins, are the 2 arms, Cancer is the chest, Leo is the heart, Virgo is the belly, and all the way down to the 2 Pisces feet. But what you'll see this evening, if you look out and do a bit of stargazing, is you'll see Aries in the west. Welcome back to Oracle Broadcasting Network. You're with Santos bonacci for the next better part of 2 hours. And today I'm discussing the stars. Astronomically speaking, astrologically speaking, astrotheologically speaking, etc., etc. So it's going to be concerning various levels, because this is how the science works. It's a sealed science. You see, when they wrote the Gospels and everything like that, they were to seal them. Sealing means hide meaning, occult them, make them allegorical. Do not speak directly of which you are speaking. Hide the meaning. That's what it means in Revelation, where it says, and the books were sealed. And Daniel was ordered by God to seal the books until the time of the end. And then they shall be opened, and many will make themselves white with the pure truth and light that the knowledge we would have, and it would be abundant, says Daniel. But see, the books were sealed up until now. And what's returning to us is the memory of this one all-time cohesive, united brotherhood of man that understood the science of ascension, the science of the sojourn of the soul. Nowhere in the universe do you forget that science. If you're going to incarnate, you're going to want to know how to stop incarnating. And why? Well, because we are of a higher source than this flesh blood stuff that's going on for 60 or 70 years, depending on the strength of the electrical wave that you were blessed with at the moment of birth. Because if you were given a weak electrical current, I mean, some children die at birth. There's no life force. It's gone. You know, it's extinguished at birth. This happens, unfortunately. And it's very unfortunate. But what does that mean? Well, it means that if it dies, you know, people die very young, 10, 11, 12. You can die of many sicknesses and lack of that force, that pure force that sustains one's, you know, the elixir of life that they keep talking about. We're supposed to have, you know, a pretty good physical existence. We're not supposed to be weaklings and just, you know, incarnate as handicapped people and mentally retarded people and things like that. And so this is this is the unfortunate thing. But those orbs that give that electric charge are obviously primarily the sun. The sun has always been one of those lights up there that the ancients studied, because they knew that the photons that emanated from the sun, or the waves, or whatever it is, the electromagnetism, plasma, whatever, that energy and that undifferentiated white light from the sun was what everything lived and breathed from and existed. In fact, we call the process whereby the sun grows organic plants photosynthesis. You see, because it's photo is light. So light is what produces all the effects that we see. There is not an effect that has been produced by any other force in the universe. Light has produced everything that exists in the universe, and that's why the Bible says God is light. God is not some dude sitting on a throne with a beard and has any kind of a name that we could pin on it. It ain't gonna be named. It's the nameless. In fact, the Hindus call it Anama. And that means, Nama means name, but when you put the A privative in front of any noun, you deprive it of its true meaning. So Anama means the no-named one. And so we begin to see that the source, the still light, as Walter Russell calls it, is where the creation comes from. When the still light is divided and produces electromagnetism. And so the ancients studied these stars, and they knew that in the 360-degree circle of the arc of the heavens, they knew that they could draw a line and they could follow the path of the sun along that line, and that line was called the ecliptic. And they happened to notice the patterns of stars that were behind the ecliptic. And the first sign they saw at March the 21st at the equinox, because they preferred to begin at the equinox, the vernal equinox, purely because that's where it all begins. Right ascension begins there. Spring, which is the start of the year, begins there. Astrology always begins with Aries at March the 21st there. Look, I can name countless reasons why everything begins at Aries. And so they followed the ecliptic from that point there. And they noticed there that there was the ram, and they put the ram there in the first 30 degrees. And then came the bull. They saw the bull's head, the Hyades, a V-shaped, beautiful structure with a red star in it, and that star is Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. And that was the face, the head of the bull. The bull has no hind legs, and it comes up upside down like the crab and the Gemini twins before it, or after it, I should say. And Marcus Manilius, the astrologer to Caesar Augustus, said that these three signs come up backwards, upside down, and they slow the sun, so that the sun above the equinoxes, or the equator, the sun above the equator is in its full force, and whereas the sun below the equator is in its weaker force of winter, you see. So, and the above portion of summer is actually 10 days longer than the below portion of winter. And that's what Marcus Manilius was saying, that these signs, the bull comes up upside down and it slows the sun, you see. This is just poetry. It's poetically true. Now, along that ecliptic came, after the bull, came the two twins, Gemini, and the sun passed through these three signs in the spring. And we'll come to the rest after the break. Welcome back. You're with Santos Bonacci, and we are talking about the stars. The stars that I'm discussing now along the ecliptic, the first ones from Aries through Virgo are the ones that you will see in February and March, and you'll also see them in April. But these stars really begun to be visible prominently around about November, around about Halloween. Halloween ushers in all of the beautiful winter stars, because Halloween is based on the Pleiades. When the Pleiades is rising at midnight on the 1st of November, Halloween is celebrated because of those Pleiades. And that begins the season, which brings, you know, all the beautiful... The Saturnalia was celebrated in Rome, and that was the Bacchanalia and everything like that. Amnesty was granted, and there was much revelry to Saturn, and then the solstice came on the 21st, and then the sun was reborn on the 25th, and that was Christmas Day, and they call this day Dies Solis Invictus Natis, the day of the unconquered sun. And then, of course, came January the 1st, 8 days after Christmas Day, and a new year begins. And these were all happening in basically under the stars of, as the sun was in Sagittarius and Capricorn. And so Halloween begins this season of the stars that I'm going to point out to you now, you know, the winter hexagon, etc. So bear that in mind, and tonight, which is the 26th of February 2012, The moon will be waxing, and she will be the moon's crescent will be very, very thin, you see, and she will be in between Venus and Jupiter this evening. I'm hoping that the clouds go away, because I won't be able to see it if they don't. But last night there was a clear sky, and I saw the crescent moon below Venus, which was to an angle, and below Jupiter. And they are the three benefics. When Jupiter is the greater benefic, Venus is the lesser benefic, and the waxing moon is a wonderful benefic. So the three of them together in one sight, the photons of light refracted from the sun, from those orbs, are very, very healing to the spirit. And those orbs, they long for you to look up at them and notice them. So notice them this evening if you get a chance, guys. Please pay attention to these orbs, and you're going to know why very soon. You are going to know why, because we're going to have to pay attention to them. So as the sun goes through the ecliptic, starting from Aries, then it goes through Taurus, the bull, upside down, and then the Gemini twins, upside down, and then Cancer, upside down, along the ecliptic, they noticed that there was the crab there at the cardinal point of the solstice. You see, there are 4 cardinal points in that wheel. Cardinal points mean points of equilibrium in the cycle. So you've got 2 equinoxes, equal day, equal night. And these occur on March the 21st and September the 21st. And then the other part of the cycle is maximum length of day and minimum length of day. And that would be June the 21st for maximum and December the 21st for minimum. And these are the cardinal points. The astrologers point out that these points are very, very powerful in your chart. And believe you me, I know how powerful these points are. I was born on one of those cardinals. March the 21st in the sign of Aries. That's pretty strong. And the astrologers noted that that is the most fiery portion of the whole chart, when Aries begins on the 21st of March. And Aries is a dynamic and powerful sign of fire. And it's very explosive. And this is why Aries tend to annoy a lot of people. But, you know, I mean, they're very explosive people. And so, but again, they have their milder traits. They can be either a ram or a lamb, depending on which they choose. But as all signs have their positive and negative virtues. But see, the ancients, they followed this line, the path of the sun, and they came to Leo after Cancer, the lion, and they placed the lion there, and that corresponds to the heart as below. And then Virgo followed Leo, and that corresponds to the belly. And Libra, the 2 scales, correspond to the 2 kidneys. And so they followed this line, this ecliptic, they called it, the yellow brick road, the circuit of Galilee, which Jesus walks upon to go and minister to the 12. You see, Jesus is always with his 12 apostles, and they go in the circuit of Galilee. Well, if you look in your Strong's Concordance, you'll find that the circuit of Galilee is the Mazzaroth, you know, the zodiac. So what we find there then is we find that the ancients made sure that they noted these portions, these 12 portions of the sky, because they knew that man was the measure of the universe. Hence, they understood that those 12 portions out there were the same 12 portions in there. As within, so without. As above, so below. They knew the fractal nature of the Fibonacci spiral, of those little spiral serpents that create all of the forms that we see, these spiral energies of motion. We call them elements, you see. We call that stuff gold, silver, you know, water, gas, solids, liquids, all of that, matter. Well, the fact is that there is none. There isn't any. There's no matter. Out there, it's all motion. And so this is why they mapped out the sky, because they needed to know what was going on up there to be able to fix what was going on in there. Because you see, we come to this incarnation with a whole bunch of problems. There are happy people, yeah, where we can experience bliss and joy, but then there's the suffering side, and we don't like that. No one likes to, have Alzheimer's or see autistic children. No one likes any of that. No one likes when their best friends leave their bodies behind in a car accident or something like that. We don't like all those parts. And so, with that in mind, we'll go to a break and see you on that side. Yeah, let's give peace a chance. Yes, and we can give peace a chance. So, and we can give ourselves some peace, because yes, as I was explaining before the break, there are some horrors that we do encounter in these beautiful lives that we are allowed to experience. As the spirit, God, mind impresses itself on matter in motion and gives us the ability to enjoy the beautiful bodies that we've been given. Beautiful. The human being is an exquisite masterpiece of creation. Exquisite. Body, mind, and spirit. We have, as the Hermetic science teaches, we are two. We are divine spirit and psychic soul. And that is who is within, you see. And the divine spirit is the one that is really partaking of the higher consciousness. The psychic soul can be fooled. And this is where many human beings suffer and get deluded in the illusion. Because these are people who are able to be manipulated to go to church, for instance. They're having a psychic experience, whereas they think it's a spiritual experience, you see. And they do all this talking in tongues and stuff like that, and they think that they're communicating with God, but what they don't realize is they're communicating with lower order beings in the astral world that usually emanate from the dark satellite, the animal chakra of the earth. And these are some savage creatures. They are very savage, and they've controlled the earth for the last couple of thousand years. They control the Vatican directly. And this is the big shocking truth that will probably have to bring down the churches. And the fact is that the churches are directly take their command and orders from this dark satellite. And that's all of Christendom, believe you me. Christendom is the major part of it, in fact. The literalist church. Christendom is administering the Inquisition here on earth. It's actually the Antichrist. It is actually persecuting the true Church of Christ. Christ means light. Light is the enlightened portion of mankind. Hermetists, so-called witches, wizards, sorcerers, heretics, etc. People like Giordano Bruno, scientists, who have been persecuted. These are the true Hebrews, the Jews that have been chosen from the called and the captive ones. And so this science of as above, so below, it was on everybody's lips, it was in everybody's hearts, it was in everybody's mind, and they knew our nature consisted of this divine spirit which is immortal, and a psychic soul which can be saved and turned and made immortal also if we save that portion of our lower nature. You see, it has to be saved. In other words, the psychic soul has to be, the soul has to be completed and fulfilled and watered and nurtured and grown. This is the soul that Jesus said, I will give 3 drachmas to one slave, 5 to another, and 10 to another. And I will go away, and then I will return. And he returns and he calls up his 3 slaves and he says, well, what did you do with the drachmas? And the first slave says, well, I was afraid of you, Lord, because you reap where you do not sow, and you are fearful and fearsome. And he said, right, take those drachmas away from him and give it to the one who has more, and you be cursed. Because the soul didn't grow. He didn't grow his soul. He was given drachmas, gifts from God, from the divine. He was given charisma and virtues and talents and skills, but did nothing with them, but went out and got a career. Instead, got a job instead of doing the fine work which we came here to do. And so the second slave came forward and he did the same. And so the master said, give me his drachmas and give it to the one who has more. And the last one said, Lord, the 10 that you gave me, I've turned these into 20. And he said, good slave, you inherit the kingdom that was founded from the beginning of time for you to inherit. And these other ones go to damnation. Meaning that the soul portion was not saved. And this is what the churches are doing. They are keeping you in the psychic soul portion and not allowing one to open the mind, the pineal gland, and the heart chakra and be a spiritual. Be a spiritual person. In other words, a person who needs nothing without, that can't be found within, because they've awakened to the higher consciousness. And when you awaken to the higher consciousness, then you have the witness, the one that bears witness that what you are saying is true. Because the unconscious ones, with their opinions and their intelligent education that go around parrot fashion repeating, think they know, but they do not know, because there is not one bearing witness which knows the truth from ages and ages gone by. You see, before we descended into conditioned consciousness, we enjoyed unconditioned consciousness. But when we descended through the 7 spheres, through the octave, down onto this earth, well, we gave up that unconditioned consciousness. There are conditions on our consciousness. There are 7 conditions. And we are the ones that have to, undo that Gordian knot. And when we do those, we unseal those 7 seals, those 7 chakras, then we have climbed back up the ladder, you see. And this science was co-opted, and the occultists know it as the Antichrist, and that is all the churches that run Christendom. 30,000 registered ones of them, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, etc. Registered businesses. These are the Antichrist, and they have a good business going, I'll tell you that. They collect donations, they don't pay taxes, they've got prime property all over the world, they've got resources and stocks and shares, and they run a slave trade, and that's called hoodwinking people and telling them that they are sheep so that they can go to their corporations, their franchises, and give them money so that the sheep can be fleeced, so that it can pull the wool over their eyes and lead them to the slaughter like lambs. That's what the sheep are for, the sheeple. The sheeple work in the religions, in the churches, and also with the government. People, time to wake up and reclaim dominion. And wake up to who the Antichrist is, because they're persecuting the people who know the science, the people who know the science of ascension. These organizations run by the dark satellite, because the dark satellite seeks to prolong its existence, and it perpetrates fear from the spirit realms and relays that to its obedient slaves, primarily the cardinals in Rome. They are the first receivers of this poisonous, toxic miasm which poisons mankind and destroys truth and kills with big pharma and drugs and oil and raping the earth. That's the Vatican, people. It's a Christian corporation. It's founded on the donation of Constantine, Peter's pence, the Church of Peter, and the false historical Christ that they've given you, no truer than Humpty Dumpty or Santa Claus. All belong to the realms of mythology. They all belong to those little dots in the sky, those scintillating little stars that glisten and say, "Hello, this is where you're going, Stardust." And that's why we call our little children young stars. Yeah, back to the stars we go. Yeah, I like to let Robert Plant's voice sing for as long as possible before I cut him off, because it seems cruel to cut that beautiful voice short. Certainly my favourite singer of all time, and probably my favourite band of all time, Led Zeppelin. And Kashmir is certainly at the pinnacle of their great works. So for all you Led Zeppelin fans, there's my thought. Now back to the stars. So the ancients, you see, first thing they did mapped out and charted the course of the sun through the year, and they discovered that it made the same path year in, year out, and it would never stray from this 17-degree width of belt called the zodiac. The Jews call that one the Mazzaroth, Job 38:32. And the Mazzaroth was this wheel in which the sun would go. And they called the path of the sun the ecliptic, the yellow brick road. You know, the road to Jericho. And as I said before the break, the circuit of Galilee. So as Jesus goes forth into the circuit of Galilee, he goes forth with his 12 disciples, 12 apostles. The 12 signs of the zodiac, you see, along the ecliptic. And sometimes in Luke chapter 10, I think it is, Jesus says he sent out his 12 and he sent out his 72. Some Bible translations say 70. Regardless, the number is pertaining to procession. You see, because 72 times 5 makes 360 degrees. And you see, everything encoded in the Bible is about these degrees. You see? Master's degrees, because the stars, the masters of the stars who knew how to measure the stars by degrees would have their master's degrees. And they would become pastors of the word, the gospel, the wheel in the sky. So they noticed that the first sign was the ram, and they placed right ascension there at the equinox. So Aries begins everything, you see, and they gave that the quality of fire, cardinal fire, the beginning of the photon journey as it splits from equilibrium on the equinox, divides into two, divides into electromagnetism. from that point of equilibrium, 0 point. And that day's coming, by the way, guys, March the 21st. Look out for it. It's going to be a very, very strong equinox. And then the ram will begin. The sun will be in the ram. Now it is in the fish at the feet. You see, remember, Aries is in the head, the first sign, the top of the head. Taurus is the lower mouth and neck. The twins, Gemini, are the two arms. Cancer is the chest. Leo is the heart, the lion heart, the Corleone. Virgo is the belly. The kidneys are the scales of justice in Libra. The generative area, male and feminine, male and female, is the Scorpio. Sagittarius, the upper thighs. Capricorn, the knees. Aquarius, the shins. And Pisces, the feet. So now the sun is in Pisces. It is about to enter Aries, where Uranus, the heavenly one, is now placed. So look out for it. This equinox is going to be a big hurdle. It will be a big Passover for the Jews. Once the sun is over that 21st mark, and it's in Nisan territory, Nisan 14 in particular, then the Jews go out and they celebrate under the full moon the marriage of the Lamb. The Lamb is Aries, and the moon, being full, is the moon in Virgo. To be exact, Libra, but Virgo was the original sign running through Virgo, through Scorpio. So every year when Christians celebrate Easter and the Jews the Passover, they're celebrating the Passover of the sun and his marriage of the Lamb with the bride, the full moon. That's why they go out on full moon and commemorate the resurrection and the death of Jesus Christ, their Saviour, because the sun resurrects in March. It's the exaltation of the sun, because it has exalted over the longer nights, and now it dominates with longer days. So they placed Aries at the first portion and then Taurus. So it goes right around, and when the sun goes through that, each sign, when the sun transits through one of these signs for 30 days, for 30 degrees, it takes on the title of the sign, you see. So when the sun enters Aries, it's the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. And the sin of the world would be the cold death of winter. Then when it comes into Taurus, it's called the rock, because the bull and Orion are the rock of the Lord. Osiris. Osiris means the rock, you see, or the Tsoah in Hebrew, which is the word they place there for Taurus and for God. Then when the sun comes into Gemini, it's the twin, you see. Jesus was always called the twin. Go to the Nag Hammadi documents and you will see that he was clearly a twin with Thomas, Didymus. Didymus means twin. Then when he goes into Cancer, he is the unique corn, the unicorn. And Jesus has always been described as the unicorn. The association has always been there. Or he is called the scarab, as all the church fathers called Jesus, my Lord, the scarab. Funny about that. So the sun, as it goes through the signs, is the Lord of that sign. And when it comes to the sign of Leo, next, it is clothed with the title of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And then when it comes to Virgo, it's the Virgin, or Jesus referred to himself as the bread of life, because in Virgo is the harvest and they make the bread. Then in Libra, Jesus is the just one of the scales. In Scorpio, he is the one that says you must be cautious as a serpent and wise as a dove, for the other signs of Scorpio are the eagle and the serpent. Then in Sagittarius, he's the one who says, I came not to bring peace to the earth, I came to divide, because Sagittarius on the 21st of December divides the year from a waxing sun to a waning sun on the solstice of the winter. And there is the horse with the arrow in his hand, and he's healing the sun in the heel, and Jesus gets a nail in the heel. and Hercules and Achilles and Krishna, etc. It's the sun. And then as the sun goes into the sign of the goat, he is the scapegoat of Israel. Then when he goes through the sign of Aquarius, he is the son of man, because that is the man of the zodiac. And then last but not least, the sign in which Jesus is dominating, Pisces, the fisher of men. And so as the sun goes through these signs, he gets to take on these names, and he dons the title of the carpenter of Nazareth, because the carpenter is the Freemason who builds his spiritual temple. And to build your spiritual temple, you must know the science of astrotheology. And so this is the temple that Jesus builds, the carpenter, as he goes around and he changes his name from Lamb of God to Scapegoat of Israel to the Lion of the tribe of Judah to the Rock to the Twin. And he takes on all these characters. And you know what? The astrologers knew that as above, so below. As the sun changes his nature through the signs, so do the people born under these signs. So if you want to know what your sign is all about, if you are Aryan, for instance, you should know that you are a lamb. And where there is a lamb, there is also the wolf. And with that in mind, we will take a break. It's a setting and great to be alive. And I've been discussing astrology, a very, very metaphysical perspective and all-encompassing syncretic way. So I hope you're enjoying this. I want to finish with some practical things for you. So you can use and point out some stars that are observable right now in the sky called the winter stars. And these are the stars from Aries through to Virgo that are appearing now in our skies. And it's beautiful to see the moon rising now, or the moon in the west setting there with Jupiter and Venus. And they are looking, the moon is in Aries, as Aries sets and Virgo is rising, and you will see all the winter skies and the winter hexagon that I'm going to point out. But going back to the astrology and how the Babylonian and Egyptian priests devised their system and polished it up and bequeathed it to us. They placed the sun, the hero, Hercules, Jason, King Arthur, Jesus, Bacchus, Dionysus. They placed him in that on that ecliptic, and as he goes around, he performs his 12 labours. You see, and he changes name as he goes through the signs. And this is how they understood that the people born under these signs would have the very characteristics of those signs. For instance, Aryans would be fiery. They would have intuition as their modus operandi that would suit them best for gleaning and gathering information and becoming conscious. They can use their intuition very well, the fire signs. Mars is the ruler. Mars is fiery, the lesser malefic. Nonetheless, he is a malefic, and he's bitter. Mars is fiery and martial. And so Aryans can be like this, you see. Where the lamb is also the wolf. So the canine is in Aries. And that's the opposite side of the sheepish, childish, or not childish, childlike qualities of the Aryans, the babies of the zodiac, because that's where the sun is the baby in the spring. Therefore, they will have those very same qualities. Then comes the rock of Taurus, and these people would be very, very stubborn, if you like. Very, very immovable at times. But these people would be very sensual too, because of the earth, the fixed earth of Taurus, of Taurians. And of course, Venus shines her light in Taurus. So these people have that nice, lazy, sort of a resigned stance in life, whereby they would enjoy to sit on a nice leather couch with a beer or a wine in their hands and enjoy the senses and the physical things. Then comes the children born under the twins, and the twins are an air sign, and it's a mutable air sign. So this is going to produce a massive polarity, and this is why the Geminians seem to be twin-like. Let's catch that thought after the break. Oh yeah, you know, you always have the Lord by your side, and you do, because the Lord is the El Lord. The Lord, the Sun, and He's always with us. In fact, He's always travelling that yellow brick road, the ecliptic, and right now He's in Pisces. And as we were saying at the, before the break, that the Sun, we've left off at Gemini. I want to go back to that, but I've got a caller I see, and I might take the call. Mark, if you're there, I'm going to take your call. And the callers, by the way, the number to call in is 512-904-8014. Are you there, Mark? Okay, try again. How's that? Mark, are you there? Hello. Okay. I'll try a little later. It seems to be a problem. So when the Sun gets to Gemini, the twins, you see, the people born under this sign have that mutability, that quality of the mutable sign, you see. And that's, it's a mental, psychic sign. So the duality of the Geminis is always that mental kind of duality. You see, they are the twins. They experience this beautiful mercurial kind of energy, and of course, remember Pollux and Castor are there. And when the Sun goes through there, he's renamed Apollo by virtue of Pollux, and that's Paul. You see, Paul derives from Apollo. Paul means the Sun, just like Peter means Jupiter. And then after this particular sign came Cancer, and these people would have the water, the emotions. Oh, by the way, the Geminians I did mention were it's mental. Aries mental. You see, immutable air. So the air signs, your Librans, etc., will be of the mental ability. You see, their minds are wonderful in terms of how they use their minds. You see, and of course the earthly ones I did mention were the sensual ones, the ones that have the senses switched right on, and express those in just a magnificent, exquisite way to behold. But the water, the fourth element, Cancer, these are the emotional ones. These ones use their emotions and have this as their primary chief guide for connecting with in there and out there. And so the way they use their emotions is quite beautiful to see. And Cancer is the cardinal water sign, and there dwelleth the moon. The moon resides in Cancer, you see. So these people are the silvery ones, and they have the warmth of summer because the sun has reached the Tropic of Cancer. So now it's in Cancer. You see, and this is how the astrology worked. They did liken the people born under the signs to the signs, you see. Leos would have that fiery sun feline aspect about them. Gold would be their element. And they do in fact shine. You see, they have the sun in their hearts. And of course the heart is now glowing, and these are sometimes perceived to be arrogant. You see, the Leos, Mick Jagger types. He's a Leo. He's a cat that loves the limelight. You see, and various performers, they act, as they have these. Madonna is one of these. Oh, look, my mind goes blank. But you'll find a lot of Leos, and the way they are comfortable on the stage is quite a delight, absolute delight to see. And then, of course, the Virgos will have the earth, the sensual, mercurial, mutable earth features. Oh, it's an exquisite. It's just beautiful to see, And everybody there born under the 12 tribes of Israel, they all have their strengths and their weaknesses, and they all resemble that particular animal. The Sagittarian will resemble the equine, and will have the spirit of Jove, the jovial Jupiter that rules Sagittarius. And so as that sun travels the ecliptic, twice the ecliptic intersects the Milky Way galactic plane. And this intersection is going to take place on May the 22nd. And right then the sun will be in the middle of the winter hexagon, because in the middle of the winter hexagon is where the ecliptic crosses the Milky Way. And to find the winter hexagon, one only has to look up tonight, and you will see the winter triangle, which is made up of the red star in the shoulder of Orion, and the brightest star in the sky called Sirius, and Procyon, the small dog. Sirius being Canis Major, the big dog. So you'll see the winter triangle, a perfect equilateral triangle, and you will see that the equilateral triangle is inside the winter hexagon. And if you allow your eyes to look with much breadth, you have to have a wide sort of a vision, like one of those wide lenses on a camera, and allow your eyes to relax and notice the 7 of the 14 brightest stars in the sky that make up the winter hexagon. And I will describe these stars, beginning with Sirius to the south and going clockwise. You have Sirius, Procyon, Pollux, Capella, Aldebaran, and Rigel. And these are the perimeter stars, the 6 stars that make up the Star of David, which is the winter hexagon, which is the star that always appears at Christmas time and before, when the Pleiades rise in the east on November the 1st. And the Star of David is directly above us right now, and in the middle of that star is the 7th of these bright stars, and it's the red star in Orion's shoulder called Betelgeuse. And Orion is lifting up that red star, his left arm, and he's reaching out for the foot of Pollux, the foot of Castor, the twin, who is upside down, but standing at the crossing of the ecliptic and the galactic plane. Welcome back to Oracle Radio, and you're with Santo Bonacci, and it's well in the second hour, and I do believe I have a caller, but I've tried to... Look, I'll give it another go. Mark, if you're there, I'm going to give you another crack and see if I can get you through. Are you there, Mark, please? Hello. Nope. Okay. Alrighty. Well, so as I was saying there at the before the break, we have the sun doing its rounds through the year, and describing the seasons in which it goes through, you see. And so this is why you get certain things that turn up, certain ideas and concepts in astrology whereby you'll find that the characteristics of the sign relate to the animal, you see. For they say in astrology that there are 3 types of Capricorns. There's the scapegoat, the mountain goat, and the pan goat, you see. And you'll find that there are, a couple of types of Geminians, a couple of types of Arians, and depending on the deacons that they're in, you see. And this was the science that the ancients studied and knew. And so a particular important part of the sky that they were referring to always was the divine cross, where the ecliptic crosses the galactic plane. And in between Gemini and Taurus, in fact, at the foot of Castor, as I've already said, the star in the foot of Castor is standing right at the crossing of the ecliptic with the galactic plane. You see, because the galactic plane rises virtually horizontally on the horizon, whereas the ecliptic rises vertically on the horizon. They are 60 degrees in what's the word I'm looking for? Skew with. I'm just, my mind's gone blank. But so the ecliptic certainly rises on a vertical sort of a plane, where depending on what latitude you're living in, whereas the galactic plane seems to sort of appear horizontally. See, so they cross at 2 intersections, and one intersection is at the foot of one of the Geminian twins, Castor, and Orion is reaching out to touch that foot, you see. And Orion is below the Milky Way galaxy, galactic plane. He is one of the 7 heroes and the only one that is below the galactic equator. Whereas the others, Ophiuchus and Bootes, etc., they all live in the northern skies, you see. So there is Orion with Betelgeuse holding up the Milky Way galaxy and reaching out for the foot of Gemini. And these 2 characters are the twins, and Orion, along with Auriga, are all inside the winter hexagon. And there they are to mark the divine cross. You see, this is what the domes in the Vatican are all about. This is where, the reaching out arm from the Lamb of God. The Lamb of God is Orion. Orion is the Lamb. And the Good Shepherd, you see, because he shepherds the flock. So he's the Lamb. He's known as the Lamb of God. And 180 degrees opposite this is where the other divine cross happens, in between Sagittarius and Scorpio. And that would be where Ophiuchus is also standing with his foot, this time above the Milky Way galactic plane, because of course Orion is the only one who is below, holding it up with his arm, whereas Ophiuchus, of course, is standing on the ecliptic with his foot right at the crossing. I wonder what Ophiuchus and Castor are doing there, and they've been there for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years, just standing there. And because, you see, the ancients knew how it worked, as above, so below. So if Aries is in the head, well then obviously where the divine cross happens between Taurus and Gemini, that would be the neck of the human being. So the top portion of the torso, hence the top of the spine, where the spine meets the bottom of the cranium in Taurus, where Orion is. And way, way down the bottom of the spinal cord and the spine, where the genitalia resides, is where Scorpio would be. And of course, between Scorpio and Sagittarius is where the other divine cross occurs. So you see, where the arrow of Sagittarius and the tail of Scorpio are pointing to the center of the Milky Way galaxy, they are also pointing to the fact that creation comes out physical creation comes out from this region of the skies because it equates to the generative system in the human being, whereas the other divine cross takes care of the other creational and generative center in the human being, which is the brain and the mind and the voice, the word of God. And that's where Orion is. Right there, holding up the divine cross. And right below Ophiuchus's feet, the divine cross. And Ophiuchus is the serpent bearer. He carries the serpent Kundalini. He carries it from the bottom of the spine all the way to his brother Orion, right next to the Pleiades, next to Taurus, in the sign of Taurus, which would correspond to the beautiful glands that we have up there in the cranium, like the pineal gland and the pituitary gland and the optic thalamus, etc., etc. And so this is why the science of above, so below, as above, so below, has been persecuted for so many years, and why the repeaters tell you that it's a pseudoscience and from the devil, who wishes to mislead you. Because you see, the servants of the dark satellite, unawares that they are serving dark entities who are controlling the spirit realms via primarily the Vatican and all of its foot soldiers below, inquisitional officers like the IRS, etc. Tax collectors. These are the ones that are persecuting it and the ones that tell you to poo-poo it, you see. But it's the most empowering science known to man. In the universe, by the way, because it explains how the universe works. 12 is the number of mind. And 7, the 7 orbs that dwell in the zodiac, the Sun, the Moon, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, Mars, Mercury, would be the 7 active forces of creation. 7 is physicality, and 7 are the 7 chakras that we have, the 7 tones in the musical scale, the 7 lights in the rainbow, the 7 colors, and the chakras, etc. 7 is everywhere. We are septenaries, and we are serpentary. Because the little serpent, you know, those little whirling, twirling spirals, those Fibonacci things, they would be the serpents, the feathered serpents that go around spinning, and everything comes from spin. Everything is spin. And the sun spins differently wherever he finds himself in that cycle of the year. Okay, back with Santos bonacci on Oracle Broadcasting Network. Very happy to be with you for the final half hour of this 2-hour segment, where I'm tying in a bit of astronomy with the mythologies and astrology. It's a very deep subject, very difficult to present information like this in 2 hours and just sort of, you know, provide many references and proofs and supporting information and everything like that. I just have to skim the surface, unfortunately, and I'm going to be doing this sort of stuff a lot more often because it's sadly neglected, and for consciousness to expand, we need to be talking more about the stars in every single possible way. So I'm going to try and, you know, do as many of these as possible. There's so much to learn about the stars and how we relate to them and how we are stars. And it's so powerful where we can go with this, with our consciousness and our rising above, you know, rising above into the higher vibrations of the beautiful, beautiful ages to come. And we can do it. We can do it as a race. The metamorphosis is upon us. The apotheosis is here. The Christ has returned. The consciousness has returned. We've awakened. The children of the sun have awakened. The sun is the Christ. He's the one that goes on the ecliptic, the light. Christ means light. You find it in words like crystal, you know, carbon crystals, which is what we are. That's the Word made flesh, you see. Christ in the flesh, and the Word was made flesh. Because everything that emanates from the sun, those photons, call them waves, call them particles, call them electrons or protons, these are what these electromagnetic rays are what we are being sustained by. We are sustained by the sun. And these orbs, they vibrate with us. We vibrate with them. And when they are at positions which antagonize our harmonics, because we've been born with certain harmonics, like every snowflake there are none alike. Every human being has different vibrations for different parts of his aura. And these have been set at birth when one takes their first breath. And where those orbs are vibrating, they leave their imprint on the human organism and on the psyche and on the mind of the native. And so a Taurian will markedly be different to an Aryan. And the signs are there. They are there. As clear as day, they are there. And they are undeniable. And I've shown many proofs of this and a lot of evidence to support this in my videos. If you care to have a look at them with an open mind on my YouTube site, Mr. Astrotheology. And there you'll find an abundance of films on the internet along the lines of astrotheology, astrology, science, metaphysics, plasma cosmology, electric universe, all of that stuff. It's all there. So you see, this is why the ancients left us this science of as above, so below. And as we go outside tonight and in the next few nights, and we look up and we spot the winter hexagon, there you will see the beautiful twins, Pollux and Castor, inside the hexagon. And there is Auriga with the little goat in its arms called Capella, one of the brightest luminaries of the sky, one of the perimeter stars, the 6 stars of the winter hex. And there you'll see Orion standing there with outstretched arm holding up the Milky Way galaxy, because he is Osiris, the king of the bottomless pit, the king of the south. And there you see Orion's hand is almost touching where the ecliptic crosses the galactic plane. It's beautiful at 60 degrees. And these two rings that intersect at their fulcrums, they are the 2 rings of the sky. One is the ecliptic, where the sun appears to go through certain stars, and the other one is simply the Milky Way galactic plane. When you look at the Milky Way, you see that it's like a highway, a Milky Way. And it's a very, very, very thin, from the profile perspective, it's a very, very narrow slither of stars. But from our perspective, we see it as a fluffy Milky Way, and it doesn't look very, very thin at all. You know, because from our perspective, because there are a lot of stars that pretty much, obscure what's going on with the galactic plane, so it looks nice and woolly and fluffy, you see. And so, but where these lines intersect is, of course, where they call it the Divine Cross. Now, when the 21st of December 2012 turns up, in about 10 months' time, one of these divine crosses, the one between Sagittarius and Scorpio, is going to align with the mundane cross. The mundane cross is the one below, consisting of the cardinal points, you see, the solstices and the equinoxes. So the 21st of December, let me see, that would be a solstice. Therefore, the mundane cross will be at solstice, whereas the divine cross will be at equinox. And it is. In fact, it is on its equator because the sun is popping from the southern hemisphere through to the northern hemisphere on this particular day. And so, so as the sun does this, the sun will be dispensing with the period known as Pisces, in which Jupiter ruled. He will hand over to Saturn. Saturn rules Aquarius. And Aquarius will bring in the reign of Saturn. And Uranus is the co-ruler, his father, his daddy. And Uranus is the heavenly one. Uranus means heaven in Greek. And he is the co-ruler of Aquarius. So we're going back to heaven. That's what it means. Heaven is in the upper chambers, the higher chakras, you see, from the heart through to the pineal gland. And so the winter hexagon was a very, very particular place that they paid attention to, because from the star Rigel at the foot of Orion goes forth the river Eridanus all the way to Aquarius. And the last star, the mouth of the river, is called Alcanar. And the phoenix rises there. The little phoenix is right at there in Aquarius, rising as it comes up at the mouth of the river, you see, at the foot of where the river ends, you see. But at the foot of Orion is where the river issues forth. And the Eridanus is the Jordanus, the Jordan. You see, this is where the sun, when he goes through and gets baptized by Orion, he is being baptized in the River Jordan. And that would be in the region of the head, because the Eridanus begins in Taurus, in the bottom of the skull, and finishes in Aquarius. So, you see, this is what it means to have the baptism in the Jordan. And as above, so below. So, yearly, the sun bestows its grand blessings, and as Revelation chapter 2 verse 1 says, that he saw the Lamb of God sitting in the throne, and from the feet of the Lamb was a river that went forth and watered the garden, and there were 12 trees on that river, the ecliptic. Welcome back to Oracle Broadcasting Network, and we are at the close of the show today. I hope you enjoyed the material. There is a lot to explain because of the depth of this this beautiful science, but certainly the ancient priesthood left this behind for the consciousness of mankind to remember and return to the into the knowledge and the knowing of this science, because once upon a time, with the state of consciousness upon this earth, we knew it. We knew this. It was stuff that was known. Like, you know, now we know about electricity. 200 years ago, they were living in the dark. Now we know it, right? We don't know why they didn't know it 200 years ago, but they didn't know it. They didn't have computers 200 years ago, and so we know by the records that they knew it. They knew this science and left it for us, and we're the ones that have despised it for forgetting what it's all about. But as the consciousness returns, we would return to this knowledge and understand it, because only conscious individuals can understand it. This is why intellectuals, clever intellectuals who are not conscious, this is why they'll stand up and argue, you know, about these sciences that have no validity in their eyes. Because, you see, these intellectuals have not yet received that beautiful baptism of consciousness which saves that psychic soul and in turn makes it immortal, because that's the nature of the spirit. And this is the nature of man, you see, for everyone is a twin, part mortal and part immortal. The spirit is immortal. And this is our true nature. Our true nature is spirit. For these bodies are just a vibration. They are just some temporary motion going on. It's just an experience, you see, and this is what experience is. Experience is incarnation. It's mind over matter. Mind impressing itself over matter. And the way it does this is through the science of astrology. And the astrologer is the one that becomes the magician that gets to know these deep things. And so I encourage one and all to go out, grab your partners, grab your friends, and go out and point up to the winter triangle. Spot it. And spot the winter hexagon. And see the river Eridanus that comes from the foot of Orion. And watch Orion as he holds up the galactic plane. And there at the intersection, at the ecliptic, there is the foot of Castor, just with its toe on that intersection of the divine cross. And so we see these two circles where they intersect there, and this is certainly a very, very divine place in the cosmology. Excuse me, I have some interference. So please pay attention to these things, and you'll see the winter hexagon there. It's beautiful, and it's the city of David. And the opposite ecliptic crossing is the other divine cross, where we will be aligned with the four-spoked wheel, as I was discussing. That when the mundane cross on the 21st of December on the solstice lines up with the divine cross above, we have the Nostradamus four-spoked wheel in alignment. So we're coming up to a galactic alignment that occurs every 24 to 26,000 years, people. It's a big one. It's a really, really big one. So please, let's pay attention. Let's look out for it. And get ready, because it's going to be life-changing in many ways than you can possibly imagine. And so we see that the stars are telling forth a story. This is the gospel. This is the gospel in the sky, and this is the story that has been told in our nursery rhymes, our poems, our legends, our myths. And we see them everywhere. Even modern corporate themes use these themes as the stars. As you see, McDonald's use the horns of Aries. Nisan also uses the symbol of the sun passing the equator. And you see Shell Oil with symbols of the sun, and all of these corporate logos. Forever, the theme, the main gospel, has been the sun. It's never been any different. And it's not one of those sons who gets to be called Jesus that sets himself apart from the rest and outshines them, for they are all the story about the same, one and the same science. And this is the solar science. It is the science of astrotheology. So I hope I've encouraged you to look deeper in the stars, get out and point out the the various positions of the zodiac, and learn the names of the stars. It's beautiful. When you do, then you know the as above of the portion below, which is who we are. And how do you know yourself? Well, the oracle at Delphi had the key, the answer. The answer is astrotheology. For the churches have thrown away the keys of knowledge and hindered the little sheep from entering into the kingdom, because they themselves do not go in. Hence they prevent others from going in. And that is their job, people. Time to take the responsibility for oneself and to learn the divine science, the holy science, as Marcus Manilius put it. And so did Firmicus Maternus. All of these scientists slash astrologers were bequeathing what they called the holy science. And holy because holy is the sun. Elios, same word. Holy Bible, that would be the book about the sun. So you see, we have our sun book, and there's no doubt about that, and that's Elios, or Jesus. And the yes means the sun, because in Hebrew, Jes, Jesus, Jesus, means the sun. And so it's all there. It's all there, hiding in the science. There is no escaping it. All the religions have their roots in astrotheology. And all of their religions owe their culture and their ceremonies and rituals to the story of the sun as it goes through the ecliptic, with its 12 helpers, the 12 fishermen, the 12 carpenters, the 12 builders, the 12 rowers in the boat of Ra. It's always 12. It always will be, because that's the mind over matter. It's the stillness, the one, the ether, from which everything emanates. The 4 rivers that come from the out of the Garden of Eden: fire, earth, air, and water. And so, guys, rejoice that we are living in this great time, which is called the time of the harvest, because, see, consciousness is going to be harvested. And like a distillery, you see, all the good stuff goes to the top. And so, as this dragon's breath comes through in the age of Aquarius, we are selected according to the consciousness. So, all the best until next week, and hope I've inspired you with the astrotheology. Take care, and catch you next week at the same time. Bye.